Film Club.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Film Club. I'm one of your hosts, Andy Harrison, and with me, as always, it's Andy Donaldson.
Hello.
Every week in Film Club, we invite you along to watch a film with us, and this week we're taking a look at the treasure of the Sierra Madre.
Tells the tale of two unlucky individuals that are looking just to get money to survive, and they take on a job, and then they actually use that money and do some additional winnings to go on search for gold. It tells a tale of the social and psychological devolution of greed, really, and it's really interesting. This is my first Humphrey Bogart film.
Is it really?
Yeah. Is it John Huston?
Yeah, it's directed by John Huston.
Never seen his stuff before.
You know, legendary director, probably most known for stuff like The Maltese Falcon. But The Treasure of the Sierra Madre is, I think, my favourite John Huston film. It's based on the book, The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, written by B. Traven.
There's so much of that kind of period that I've never watched. And when you mentioned last week we're going to do this, I was like, oh, it's interesting. I've never seen that before. I enjoyed it. I don't know if I'd watch it again. It's 1948 it came out, to be fair, so it holds up really well. I always compare two films, what I think are around the same era. There's 12 Angry Men, which we absolutely loved, which is 50s. I know it's a few years later. And then Streetcar Named Desire, when did that come out?
1951.
Yeah, okay, so similar time periods. Whereas I personally find them two very different films in terms of acting. Like Streetcar Named Desire is more theatrical for me, with the exception of Brando. And I found this to be a lot more in terms of style of 12 Angry Men. And I actually really enjoyed that because I came into this not knowing what to expect.
I think that in terms of performances, this film is held together by two. So I think that one, like Tim Holt, Bruce Bennett, like they're good. But really, you've got Humphrey Bogart as Dobbs. And his whole descent into madness is one of my absolute favourite things about this film. Like... At the time, Humphrey Bogart was known as the noir detective. And The Treasure of the Sierra Madre really blends those two genres together. It takes the detective noir and it marries it up with the Western and it puts them out there in the Midwest. And the other one, which is just oozing with charm, has to be Walter Huston, who is the director John Huston's father.
Really cool.
Who's playing Howard.
Hey, you fellas, how about some beans? You want some beans? Going through some mighty rough country tomorrow, you better have some beans.
And he's really cool in that end scene as well. Just that moment of chaotic laughter in the end scene.
He sets the archetype for what a prospector is in all of our minds. Like if I say prospector to somebody, they think of Stinky Pete from Toy Story 2. It all comes from exactly what Walter Huston did here with Howard. Like he's fantastic. I love how charming and how wizened he is. Like traditionally in this sort of role, you've got the guy at the beginning who tells you, be careful of the troubles ahead. But then normally in sort of like a lesser story, he might also succumb to those temptations. But I love that in this, he's so wizened of the world that he doesn't. He knows exactly what the pitfalls are. You can sort of see that he knows what's going on with Dobbs. But he also knows he can't quite entirely control him. So just sort of lets him get on with it and keeps his head down and goes about it the way he intended to.
And it's interesting because how good the chemistry is, especially between Dobbs and Curtin, especially towards the start. That lovely kind of bromance, for lack of a better word, that they have. We started with nothing. In the end, we'll come back with nothing. Lo and behold, that's not the case. And then I love how that just turns on its head, and all that kind of chemistry that they have just goes out the window. And especially through Bogart and Dobbs, the character of Dobbs, just kind of that decline, that mental decline of greed. The one staple in this film is Howard.
Speaking of Tim Holt for a second there, One of my favorite, I think underrated moments of this film is after the mine collapses and Tim Holt Curtin, he has a moment where he sort of he goes, oh my God, the mine's collapsed. He runs over to help Dobbs and he stops for a second and he is faced with the exact same sort of temptation that is polluting Dobbs's mind. But he stops, he considers it, he almost walks away. And then you get this gorgeous little swell of music where the tone shifts from being, I think they actually use the exact same melody, but the tempo is shifted. One's very, very dark, downtrodden, and the other one is like light and heroic. And they do this gorgeous shift between the two of them.
It's interesting you mentioned about music. Max Steiner, who composed this film, does a really good job, a fantastic job, in fact. And you're right about the swells of music. There's some lovely moments that it really accentuates the feel of the film. But there's some amazing use of dissonance towards the end in that sandstorm, really right towards the end of the film. What doesn't necessarily come through as much is the use of sound effects, sound design. There's a moment when he's having a bar fight with they're having a bar fight with a guy who owes him money. And they go to throw a punch, and nothing.
It's the weakest punch in cinematic history.
Yeah, it's a bit. I watched that and I was like, that's a shame.
Do you want to know the worst thing about that?
Go on.
That scene took 5 days to film.
And
I'm just going to say it. Those are 5 days wasted. That's not a good scene.
No. It's interesting actually. Moving on to this because I feel that the start of the film is I struggled to get into it, and I feel like the first half hour, the pacing of the film, I know you get to see kind of what a kind of a character they both are in terms of kind of scrounging for food, that they then go and smoke and have a drink, but I feel like the pacing struggles at the start. It's only when they actually get in the middle of their kind of gold digging that they actually see the kind of character arcs come through. The greed that prevails, unfortunately, and it does take a while for that to kick in, unfortunately.
I quite like the establishing stuff they do in the beginning. They set up a lot of the themes of the film. Them developing that distrust is required in the beginning. So the distrust that you sort of need later on, it makes sense. Do you know why I was hoping that this would click with you specifically?
No, and I feel like I've missed something really obvious now.
No, I mean, probably not. The thing that I always think about with The Treasure of the Sierra Madre is the progenitor to There Will Be Blood. It is the same sort of, it has this drenched Western backdrop, but really it's about the gold rush, or in the case of There Will Be Blood, it's about the oil rush. It's about the evils of money and people succumbing to those evils, and the way in which it's not necessarily about the plot, and it's not necessarily about the act of finding the resource. Instead, it's about the characters sort of devolving over time.
Yeah. I like that connection. I never even saw that connection, but you're absolutely right. Absolutely, the fact he's willing to sacrifice so much for greed, and equally the same here with Dobbs. Good connection. That actually never thought about that. I have a question to ask you, and I hope the answer is no. Did your copy of the film have Spanish subtitles?
No.
All right.
Okay. That is a question a lot of people ask. I actually really like this. My understanding of why there's no subtitles for those sections is to make you, the audience, feel a little bit like an invader into those lands.
Yeah.
So
okay.
In the same way that those characters aren't really supposed to be there, in the same way they become sort of intruders in that land, we also feel a little bit, especially towards the end when the nature itself is reclaiming that gold in the dust storm. And then we, the audience, are also being pushed out of Mexico because we are also not supposed to be there.
I like that perspective. It's also ironic that the bandits who are there to steal everything actually are the ones that actually put the gold back where it belongs, in their own country. So, yeah, interesting that.
Badges? We ain't got no badges. We don't need no stinking badges. I don't have to show you no stinking badges.
Yeah.
Come on, man. That's one of the best lines of cinema. It's fantastic. I love that guy.
Carguen armas. Mi subteniente me deja agarrar mi sombrero. Dámelo. Apunten.
Is it, what's he called? Gold top?
Gold hat or something?
Gold hat, sorry, not gold top, gold hat, yeah. There's some actually really. It's interesting you say that when they first come against each other, where he shoots the pocket watch out the hands. And I know it's just done with good editing and good kind of effects, but I enjoyed that bit. I was thinking, this like kind of lovely little standoff that has this little fight out, and I was thinking, oh shit, they're going to get flanked here, but no, they pull through.
Well, I love that they become this like distrusting element, right? They're going to come in and claim to be the law, and they're not, and we know that, and we're really concerned for our heroes at that point, or I guess our protagonists at that point. And I love that sets up later on that very creepy scene where the natives first arrive at the campfire, and you don't know why they're there. You assume that they are yet again somebody trying to steal the gold, and it's implanting in you that sort of distrust that Dobbs is feeling, basically. Like that paranoia that's creeping into them. And it turns out those natives are very nice people that are there because they need help.
Yeah. I like that.
One more thing before we go, I think it's worth mentioning the Treasure of the Sierra Madre is super important because it was one of the very first Hollywood films to be shot on location outside of America. Wrapped up a massive budget because of it, but also I think it helps it age a little better rather than feeling like it's set on a soundstage or America, standing in for Mexico.
Yeah, the landscape was amazing.
But anyway, there is the Treasure of the Sierra Madre. You can let us know in the comments below what you thought of the film. But Andy and I are going to be back once again next week, where it's time to take a look at the Hurt Locker.
Cheers, guys.
Until then, get watching.